So, all right, we are looking at Revelation tonight and not at Psalms because Josh is out of town. So we're looking at Revelation. We're looking at chapter 18, and we're going to read the first 8 verses of Revelation chapter 18. Oh, I need to change the image here. Thank you. I have to basically stop that. Oh, okay. There we go. All right. So, and chapter 18, as we stated in the beginning of this Sunday morning, this is about the fall of Babylon, Babylon the Great. So let's read the first 8 verses here, Revelation chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. After these things, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached the heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Render to her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mix double for her. In the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I sit as queen and am no widow, and will not see sorrow. Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judges her. Now, we had looked at question 2 and talked about who proclaims the fall of Babylon, this angel with this great glory of God that illuminated the earth, and we wanted to make sure they reminded us of that. And we're actually starting to look at question 3, and there's actually quite a bit to talk about there, so I want to go back to that. What is said concerning nations, kings, and merchants in regards to Babylon in verse 3 there?
The nations drank the wine of fornication.
Right. Nations have drunk of the wine of her fornication. Right? And, yes, ma'am?
Seems to be that they're like sort of co-guilty with her. Also, they also reap the benefits, the riches, as a result of the sins. They are
that's a good way of saying it. They are co-guilty of these sins with her, and they have reaped the benefits of those sins. The worldly benefits is what we're referring to. And that's definitely true. We'll see that more as we go also. The kings have committed fornication with her, and merchants have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. So when it says abundance of her luxury, this refers to a very self-indulgent luxury or a wantonness, a strong desire for selfish pleasure. Very selfish pleasure. Now, also want to mention that some translations will say this a little differently as far as the wine. Let me get that. Drunk the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And some will say it differently. They may say something like wine of passion, or the NIV will say maddening wine. But I really feel like the wrath is more the correct meaning. God's wrath and judgment, they are drinking and bringing that on themselves as they commit these sins with Babylon. So they are drinking of that cup of wrath that God is going to pour out. And really, if you think about it by passion, back then, a lot of times passion just meant a very strong response. And in this case, it's a strong, indignant response from God. So it's still a very angry response. Now, today, it just sounds a little odd because when we say passion, I think most of us do not think of necessarily being angry. But especially if you think back in the King James days, that was not unusual for them to say that about something just meaning that it was a strong emotion or a strong feeling. So, let's see. It does also reflect how strongly God feels about idolatry. Because remember, Babylon is the harlot and idolater, and he is jealous. And this idolatry will bring wrath upon Babylon. Does anybody have anything else on that? Okay. So if we look at question 4, what does a voice from heaven implore the people of God? All right. What does it ask the people of God to do? Yes, Addie.
To come out from her.
Right. To come out of her, lest they share in her sins and receive her plagues. In other words, receive her wrath, right?
Yep.
And what kind of things, from the Bible does this remind you of? Matt?
Leaving Egypt.
Leaving Egypt? Okay, because they had to come out of Egypt. That was one I didn't think of, but that's a good one. And also, if you think of Sodom, right? That's what Eddie was saying, Sodom. So if you think of Sodom, and there's a lot of references with this idea in the Old Testament, and I have a few, so bear with me. But we're told to be separate from the world, right? We live here, but that doesn't mean that we join in with the things that society does that we know are wrong. So, if we look at Isaiah chapter 48, verse 20, go forth from Babylon, flee from the Chaldeans with a voice of singing, declare, proclaim this, utter it to the end of the earth. Say, the Lord has redeemed his servant Jacob. And so that refers to the Israelites, but we have to remember that now we are God's people, and it refers to us also in a way. So Isaiah chapter 52, verse 11, depart, go out from there, touch no unclean thing, get out from the midst of her, be clean, you who bear the vessels of the Lord. These are from the Old Testament, but both of these, God is calling his children out of Babylon in the Old Testament. And then we're told how to live in this world, right? We're supposed to live in this world, but not be conforming to it. Now, if we look at 2 Corinthians, Paul also says some of the same thing. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 17 and 18. Therefore, come out from among them and be separate. He's actually quoting one of the earlier scriptures there. And be separate, says the Lord. Do not touch what is unclean, and I will receive you. I will be a father to you, and you shall be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty. And then 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 11 and 12, Peter is reminding us of how we should conduct ourselves in this world and not be swayed. Beloved, I beg you, as sojourners and pilgrims, we're strangers in a strange land. This is not our home, right? Abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul, having your conduct honorable among the Gentiles, that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may, by your good works, which they observe, glorify God in the day of visitation. So we're being called to still be God's salt and light in society. Yes?
It makes me think of the phrase, it's always greener on the other side. We want to get on the other side because it looks so pretty. The world looks so fun. Look what happens now.
Oh.
I want to be out there.
Right. We can be tempted into thinking that, the grass is greener on the other side, and be tempted by those sins and the things we used to do. Yes?
But if you talk to someone that went to the other side, and they talk to you and say, you know what, I made so many mistakes, I wish I'd never gone to the other side.
Right. Well, that's what we learn a lot of times by giving into that temptation, by visiting the other side. We find that it's not so green after all. We find there's a lot of problems in it, and it causes us a lot of pain and distress. Like Lot living in Sodom, that was hard on him.
The grass looked greener there.
But he thought the grass was greener. Remember, him and Abraham split, and so, yeah.
And not even talking about people in the church, but you talk to these movie stars who had lived this big life, that they just did whatever they wanted to do because it made them so happy.
Right.
And now you're seeing that as they get older, they realize really stupid. Why did I do all that stupid stuff?
Well, a lot of us do that. I mean, you're speaking of movie stars, and that's true. Famous people, especially when you're young and you get this flood of money and fame, and you sometimes make a lot of foolish decisions. But you find those people as they get older, they usually learn from those mistakes, and they hopefully straighten up. Now, not everybody does, but a good number do, and we see that. And we find out that great life is not so great. So, the second part of this question, because I know I went on with some verses there, but I thought it was important that we realize those. Also, this coming out of her, some do equate this to like the Protestant movement and coming out of Catholicism. I think spiritually for us, we just need to look at it as, coming out of society, not doing the same things that we see others doing that we know are wrong. So, but nonetheless, some do equate it with that as well. And the second part of this question is why? Why is Babylon being punished?
Because they sinned.
Her sins, right? Her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Not like God really forgot, but just, it's that appropriate time, and he's not going to put up with any more. If we look at Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 9, it says, "We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go every one to his own country. For her judgment reaches to heaven and is lifted up to the skies." Does anybody have anything else on that? Okay, so if we look at question number 5, to what degree will Babylon be judged?
Double.
Double, right? Some of it is double.
Yeah.
Double according to her works, right? Just as she did to others in some cases, if we read those verses, and to the degree that she lived in glory and luxury, in other words, to the degree that she enjoyed the worldly things, she will suffer torment and sorrow. That is the wrath and the punishment. Notice that the punishment fits the crime, and there is an extra penalty for the sins committed, maybe due to pride, because it mentions I am a queen and no widow. Now, God warned of this punishment, believe it or not, in Isaiah 47. I'm sure you believe it. But anyway, verses 7 through 9 in Isaiah chapter 47, God warned of this punishment. "And you said, I shall be a lady forever." Because I forgot to mention, this chapter is called, at least in my Bible, they call it the humiliation of Babylon. So, "And you said, I shall be a lady forever, so that you did not take these things to heart, nor remember the latter end of them. Therefore hear this now, you who are given to pleasures, who dwell securely, who say in your heart, I am, and there is no one else besides me. I shall not sit as a widow, nor shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall come to you in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon you in their fullness, because of the multitude of your sorceries, for the great abundance of your enchantments." And notice there's another phrase here that I always find troublesome. It says, "There is no one else besides me," as if proclaiming themselves God, right? And I've heard people who actually say that, and it's worrisome and troublesome. I feel for that person, because none of us are God, right? I mean, we're not. We're his children, and that's a great thing, but to put ourselves in his place is wrong. But there's a whole lot here. There's a whole lot of, the pride there of saying there's no one else beside me, and saying I shall be a lady forever. That kind of goes back to the other verse that I was talking about, saying where they declare they are a queen and no widow. Let's see. Now, where it says sorceries and enchantments, these things are really more about not so much about, sometimes sorceries in the Bible can refer to almost drug use and idolatrous practices and stuff. And some of this can apply to that, but some of this can also just apply to the temptations to tempt someone into idolatry through, the riches and the luxury and all that. And the same as far as the enchantments, kind of taking hold of your mind and fooling you into something, a kind of a deception. So now, does anybody have anything on that before we move to the next question? All right, so if we look at question 6, what plagues will come to her in one day? Well, it says there in chapter 8, it will be death and mourning and famine. And it's kind of a lot to go on in one day. But again, I think like we were talking and we said 1 hour, it has to do with a swiftness of this judgment, right? So it has to do with the fact that this is going to be a sudden, catastrophic end. Yes?
She's going to lose everything that she had.
Yes.
She claimed she was this arrogant, prideful queen who never suffered, loss, grief, mourning. She's always the top of her game. But she's losing everything. All of her followers, they're going to be out of the picture. They're not going to follow her anymore because they're not going to profit. That was the only reason they followed her in the first place. She's going to be hungry, even though she had this life of luxury and abundance. She's going to have famine. She's going to have death and mourning. She's going to have these plagues, whatever those are.
Well, just like you were saying, she has had all these great things, right? So she's going to get the opposite. She's going to get the death, the mourning, and the famine. Whereas what has she had? She's had a life of luxury and of, riotous living, they would say, or, all kinds of things like that. Idolatrous living, really, but also a rich and opulent lifestyle. And now she's going to, like you said, she's going to lose everything. She's going to lose her children. She's going to lose everything.
You're a queen. You're not missing out on meals. You're not
right.
Eating.
You're served as a queen, yes.
Budget meals or anything like that.
No, you're not eating macaroni and cheese. That's right, yeah. Yes.
It makes me think of the rich young ruler. He wasn't a wicked person, but his soul was required of him. The rich young ruler, now he was the one who did not want to give up his wealth, right? So yeah, I mean, that was a sad thing, and possibly in a similar way. See, he was attracted to the wealth or the worldly goods he had, and he didn't want to give those up when Jesus said, sell what you have or give what you have to the poor. I forget which way that went. It may have been sell and give to the poor. Nonetheless, he did not want to give up his riches, right? So, what is her being Babylon? Did you have something?
Yeah, she's going to be utterly burned with fire.
That's right. That's our question. What is her ultimate end? She's going to be utterly burned with fire. She's going to be, you can think of that as being reduced to ashes, right? When we utterly burn something with fire, ashes is all that's left.
The last chapter was that they ate her too.
Oh, that's true. They do mention eating her flesh, which is gross, but yes, they do mention that, yeah. Yeah, okay. So let's see. Does anybody have anything on that before we move forward to the next verses?
Loses everything that she values.
Right, she's losing everything that she values, which is all the things of the world, right? All the worldly pleasures. Like we were talking about the luxurious indulgences, or I forget the exact phrase now, but basically all those selfish pleasures. That's what she's going to lose, all those things. Yes?
And if we look at ourselves, we have fleshly lusts that we're after, but we need to go after the spiritual things because that's forever and ever and ever.
That's right. We struggle and fight these temptations for these selfish worldly pleasures too. All kinds of lust of the flesh, or, the want of money and things like that, the desire for things of this world, we have to fight that temptation and not go after that, but go after the spiritual things. And we need to make sure that we're coming out of Babylon. We're not in Babylon. We're not enjoying those wrong things. I know it's kind of odd to say it that way, but in a spiritual sense, we do not belong and are not a citizen of Babylon. We are a citizen of the kingdom, so a citizen of the kingdom. So we need to make sure that we're keeping that in mind and acting appropriately, kind of like Peter said. Someone read, do you have anything? Okay. I'm going to read Revelation chapter 18, verses 9 through 20. That's the next section of our scripture. The kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise anymore. Merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen and purple, silk and scarlet, every kind of citron wood, every kind of object of ivory, every kind of object of most precious wood, bronze, iron, and marble, and cinnamon and incense, fragrant oil and frankincense, wine and oil, fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and chariots, and bodies and souls of men. The fruit that your soul longed for has gone from you, and all the things which are rich and splendid have gone from you, and you shall find them no more at all. The merchants of these things who became rich by her will stand at a distance for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour such great riches came to nothing. Every shipmaster, all who travel by ship, sailors, and as many as trade on the sea stood at a distance, and cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What is like this great city? They threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city, in which all who had ships on the sea became rich by her wealth. For in 1 hour she is made desolate. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her. So if we look at question 7 for this, what first group is described as mourning the fall of Babylon? The kings, right? The kings. Now, why were these kings mourning or lamenting? Yes, Matt?
They're seeing the central kingdom of where they get all their riches and commerce, and like, oh man, we're not going to make any money anymore.
Yes, they're seeing basically all their power and pleasures and money being taken away, right? They're losing all those worldly things they're looking for, or they have been enjoying and wanting more of, because once you get a little, that's not enough. You got to have more, right? It's kind of the way that works. But if you think of this as Rome and Roman society and the government, then these governors or kings, they get their power and authority from Rome. And if you see Rome fall, then they all know that they're doomed and they're next too. So if you think of it that way, because they get their authority from Rome, right? And so that's kind of a historical viewpoint of that. In another sense, if we think about it spiritually and down through history and look at even our common day, in another sense, corrupt officials and governments, they always benefit from a corrupt society. The more society is focused on self-indulgent pleasures and greed and material things and not following God, especially not following God with honesty and integrity, the more corrupt the society is, the more it will be distracted by what they're doing. They'll be distracted from what is going on, Or they just won't care about anything else except enjoying their pleasures and their wealth and maybe their own power. And again, I think that's a comparison we can make to today, bringing that forward. Does anybody have anything else on that? All right, so we want to look at question 8. What will they say as they see the smoke of her burning from a distance? And we actually get some of this repeated a few times, but this is like in verse 10.
Woe to you, your doom has come.
Is that what that translation says? Which translation are you looking at? The NIV. Okay, the NIV says, and this is fine. That's why I'm asking, though. The NIV says, woe to you, your doom has come. And in the New King James Version, it says, alas, alas, again, that great city, Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. So that's just a difference in translation. It's not a bad thing. I was just wondering. Well, that's okay if you didn't read it all. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. So, but anyway, and again, what's the significance of the 1 hour?
Short period of time.
Short period of time, sudden, swift judgment, right? So, yes, I'm sorry.
It's just like back on 9/11, right? There's 2 amazingly tall twin towers, and 2 hours later, they're gone.
That's right. If you think of
It's incredibly, like, nobody ever thought that could happen.
Right. If you think of the Twin Towers and the way they came down within just a couple of hours, it was really sudden and swift. We're not necessarily saying that was judgment, but that's an idea. I mean, if you look at that's how swift things can change and how swiftly things can be changed by that kind of destruction. And those things came down. And I mean, I remember when they were being built, so it was really weird to see them come down. I remember, well, anyway, that's just an old thing, I guess. But some of us remember when they were being built. So, yes.
And we thought that was over, and then 2 more things had happened after that.
Oh, as far as the towers, yeah. And then there were still a couple of other things going on that we didn't know about. Again, swift things like hitting the Pentagon, and then that one plane was brought down without ever making it to its destination. So a lot, and that changed. Think about how that changed a lot about our society and security and things we do. It made a huge impact to us, huge difference. Now, I also wanted to mention that this kind of relates as relating to those kings or governors, depending on how you want to look at them. This also pertains to the shortness of their rule. Remember in chapter 17, verse 12, the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. So just remembering that this is just the shortness of their time of authority. It's not very long. Does anybody have anything else on that? Yes, Donna.
This is completely different, but what is that picture?
This is a artist's rendition of Babylon. This is how Babylon is kind of described in the Bible. If we look at, I think that's in the beginning of 17, yes. So, and it's where she's called a harlot. Let me go there, and I'll read just like the first part of that. Okay, the Scarlet Woman and the Scarlet Beast is even what they name that here. Let's see, let's come down to... And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. So this is supposed to represent Babylon as described here in Revelation. And it is an artist's rendition, so I mean, we don't have to get too caught up in that, but just remember that's an artist's rendition, but it's not overall bad. I think it shows a lot of the things that we have discussed. And actually, we're going to kind of revisit that in a minute. If we look at question 9, was that okay? Does that answer your question, Donna? And that's supposed to be the beast, and she's sitting on the beast. So,
But that rendition is showing how she's dying with the smoke going up.
well, it does seem to show smoke and stuff in the back, like she's going to be burned. Yes, it does. Yeah. Even though we don't see any flames at this point, but I think that's part of that idea, is that's an impending doom coming. That's a good point to make. Yeah. All right, so if we look at question 9, what second group is described as mourning the fall of Babylon? The merchants, right? The merchants, right? The people who make money. So the merchants of the earth. Now, why are they mourning?
Their profit, their livelihood, everything is gone up in smoke.
Their profit, their livelihood, everything is gone, right? All that money, all that material wealth is gone.
No one will buy their goods.
No one buys their merchandise anymore. It plainly says that. No one will buy their goods anymore. So their money, their profit, they're like a Ferengi from Star Trek. Their profit is gone. That's all they care about. At least that's the implication. Yes.
And they're selling everything under the sun.
Right, and they're selling all.
And frankincense, and I don't know what else they could have sold.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because if you'll notice in the list of things that are being sold, they are selling everything. They are selling even bodies and souls of men. So, I mean, they're in the slave trade. They're in everything. Anything, good, bad, or indifferent, if they can make a profit on it. And we think about that, that's very similar to today. Yes?
The list also is reminiscent of the materials used to create the temple.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay, so a lot of these materials would have been found in the temple, right? Okay. And there is a feeling like you're thinking of the temple or the tabernacle, but there is a relationship, like I think the workbook author had mentioned this too, is that, some people also tend to think of Babylon as actually being Jerusalem and being the Jewish, the Jewish people at that time. Because they too were persecuting Christians, right? Remember, Paul was finding everybody he could that followed the way, which was Jesus, and getting rid of them. So they were responsible for that. So, okay, so verse 14, what is the fruit their soul has longed for? Because you notice that's mentioned there, right? And we really already mentioned it. I don't mean for this to be like a mystery or anything. But it's money, it's wealth, it's profit, right? That's the fruit that they have longed for, right? The fruit that your soul has longed for has gone from you, and all the things which are rich and splendid have gone from you, and you shall find them no more at all. So all these goods, all these things, all this money, all this is gone.
It would be like in their day, the Great Depression, where.
Oh, yeah, it would be akin to the Great Depression, I guess. Yeah, you could think of it that way. But yeah, so, and then with this reaction that they have, how are they reacting in verse 15? If we look at that, and it's something that's kind of repeated, but how are they reacting?
Well, they're standing afar off, weeping and wailing and carrying on because.
They're standing afar off, weeping and wailing. Yeah, they're standing afar off, they're weeping and wailing, that's right. And they're afraid of her torment, that it might get on them, right? We don't want no part of that. We wanted the money, we wanted the wealth, but we don't want no part of your punishment. We're like, no, we want away from that. Yes.
The NIV
Oh, okay. That's good. So the NIV says both the kings and the merchants are terrified of her torment. So that's good. Yeah, that makes sense. Because neither of them would want to receive that punishment, right? And again, that points back to where is their heart? Where are these people's heart? Yes.
But they were partners with her. They
Yes.
deserve it.
I'm not saying they don't deserve it, right?
Shaking in their boots.
Yeah.
Know that
They were
they're
partners.
guilty.
Right. They know that they too are guilty. That's right. Yes, Matt.
And there's no sense that they're trying to rescue her.
No.
They don't care.
That's a good point too.
Too bad. I don't want that.
Yeah, they're not trying to rescue her. They're just like letting her go up in smoke. They're not doing it. They're standing afar off, afraid, and they're not doing anything to help out, right? And they know that they are guilty, but their heart, their treasure, where is their treasure? It's all in worldly stuff, right? It's all in the worldly goods. It's not in heaven where it should be, yes.
When you think of Jesus dying on the cross, you wonder if some of those people thought, wait a minute, we made a mistake. Stop. But nobody stopped it, even if they were like these people. You know what I mean? Like nobody tried to intervene.
Right, nobody tried to intervene. Even if somebody had that feeling, which I don't know if anybody did, but it's not impossible. Sometimes people do regret things and want to undo it, but nobody did that, right?
I think particularly the Jews who called out and demanded he be crucified.
Right.
They didn't have a change of heart.
Right, and you think about some of them, maybe Nicodemus, maybe some of them that would have wanted to try to save him, but they didn't. And maybe he didn't have that much pull anyway, but just saying, And then a lot of them didn't want to go down with him. I'm not trying to be mean, but I mean, a lot of times we see a sinking ship, we're getting out of there. We're not going down with it, right? So, and that's what they would have thought at that time. So, all right. So let's see. Oh, okay. We're going to have to stop here. I didn't realize it was so late. We'll come back to question number 10 Sunday morning. So we'll close up here. Thank you for your time and your attention this evening. Really appreciate it. So as far as an invitation this evening, I want us to look at John, the Gospel of John, chapter 9, verses 1 through 5, if you want to look there. Now, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So I want to talk to us about working while we can work. If we notice here and think of what Jesus was doing, he was taking advantage of an opportunity here. He sees this blind man. He does go on, if you remember in the reading, that he heals this blind man of his blindness. So, and notice Jesus' attitude here. He says, he basically is saying his time is short, and he realizes he has to work while he can. He says there's coming a time when there will be no work, that we will not be able to work. And while he is here, he is the light. So he's taken this opportunity to heal somebody, to bring glory to God. As he says in verse 3, the works of God should be revealed in him, to reveal the works of God. So he took advantage of this opportunity to do that and to also teach the apostles, his disciples, us, teaching us, that we also need to do the same thing. We need to work while we can work. He set this example for us in just such a simple way while he's just going. He's just passing by and he sees this opportunity and he does it. And that's how we need to look at our lives as and our opportunities, those times when we're just passing by and we have a chance to make an impact, to do something. You know, we have to realize our time is short also. And we must work while we can still do something. Because there will come a time for us too when we will not be able to work. We will not be able to do whatever that is, whether we've passed on or we're just unable. So we must take advantage of our opportunities here in this life. And we want to notice something else that Jesus told us, which also reinforces this. If we look in Matthew chapter 5, and we look at verses 14 through 16, you'll recognize these verses, I'm sure. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Jesus was just doing this exact same thing, saying he was the light and he was doing works to give glory to God. And that's what we should be doing. That's what he tells us to do, and that's our example. We represent Jesus now. And we are the light in the world. He said so. It's his light, but still, we're representing him and his light in this world, in this society. So we must do the works of God here while we can. We won't always be able to do it, and we don't want to miss our opportunities. And here tonight is another opportunity. If anyone needed to repent or come to Christ or renew that dedication to the Lord. You know, we're not promised another day. We can't just walk by those opportunities and say, well, I'll do that tomorrow, because tomorrow might not be here. So we want to make sure we remember that. And if you do have any need, if there's anything we could help you with, please come forward as we stand and as we sing.